Question number 7, Deputy Clare Daly.
Thanks, Ciarán Comhairle. Minister, as you know, the EPSN Act was supposed to provide for the education of children with special needs. Indeed, it referred to also further and adult education. But that hasn't actually happened, and we don't have an inclusive or needs-based education system for special needs. I'm thinking particularly against the backdrop of the outgoing Ombudsman for Children report, which criticised the government and referred to the large number of complaints that her office handled because of lack of resources, and that poor decision making shouldn't be justified on economic grounds. So what are your plans to fully implement all articles of this Act?
Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Daly. A significant number of sections of the Education for Persons with Special Educational Needs Act have been commenced, principally those establishing the National Council for Special Education and those promoting an inclusive approach to the education of children with special educational needs. In light of the very difficult economic situation and the significant costs involved in fully implementing the EPSN Act, the previous government deferred the full implementation of EPSN. While awaiting the full implementation of the EPSN Act, the NCSE has made a number of recommendations aimed at developing a better or more effective alternative to the current resource allocation model, which aims to move the system towards ultimate implementation of the EPSN Act. It is intended to bring into effect many of the good ideas contained in the EPSN Act on a non-statutory basis initially, through policy developments across a range of areas, in conjunction with the NCSE policy advice.
Deputy Daly.
Sadly, the Act is 10 years old, and the reality on the ground for families and children with special needs is they're actually going backwards. I mean, the National Council for Special Education was supposed to provide for resources and meet the needs of children with special education, but in reality it has been really used to implement a cap on SNA posts in 2010 rather than really the original aims of the Act, and this has had a devastating impact on the children involved. I mean, for the current school year 2014 to 2015, 40% of the applications made by schools for SNAs were rejected. 20% of the applications for resource teachings were refused. So these decisions on economic grounds are actually eroding the education of special needs children who are in education now. I mean, the Act was supposed to ensure that these children's needs were met in an inclusive environment, but would the Minister accept that many children who actually would be available and capable of mainstream education are finding themselves being put into special schools or special units because the resources simply aren't being put there to meet their needs, and they are being left behind, and the next generation of young school children are being lined up to do the same unless the Act is fully implemented?
Minister.
Well, as I said, policy direction is moving towards the full implementation of the Act, but I mean, to be perfectly honest, finance is an issue. I'll be quite candid about that, and we've had very tight financial situations. And the National Council for Special Education suggested that an additional investment of over a period of years up to €235 million per annum across the education and health sectors would be required to fully implement the Act. And in fact, my department believes it's probably a good deal more than that. So we're moving gradually towards it, and I suppose, Deputy Daly, you know, if we had more funding we'd move faster, but that's the reality. But there has been a very large increase in the number of both resource teachers and SNAs in recent years, and as you know, the NCSE is proposing new ways now of allocating, which are out for discussion, and that would allocate resources in line with the level of need rather than by disability category. So it would get rid of that medical model, if you like, and ensure that the resources are in the schools before the child comes in, so that parents don't have to pay for sometimes expensive assessments, etc.
Right. I think that will be cold comfort to the parents involved. I mean, a right to an education is a fundamental human right for all children to achieve to the best of their ability. And the reality is, if we got a few corporations to even pay the effective rate of corporation tax that they're being levied, not to mind increasing it, we would, for example, have extra resources. If we, rather than trying to reduce tax to the top earners, if we collected a bit more, you'd have plenty of resources to do that. Some of the mechanism, parents are being been excluded from that. For example, non-cost measures in the Act, such as involvement of parents in the education and decision-making of their children, is not being implemented. The parents are not being involved. The CNOs are making decisions, often without meeting parents and taking on board their viewpoint. There's supposed to be an independent appeals mechanism in the Act. Again, no right to appeal is in place, so presumably these measures wouldn't be wholly costly. And would the Minister not agree that we actually waste millions every year in legal actions that parents are forced to take in order to achieve, and they often do, through litigation, their legal rights in this area? And wouldn't we be far better off, rather than enriching the legal profession, by guaranteeing those rights at source?
Thank you.
Well, first of all, just to say that thankfully the economy is recovering, Deputy Daly, you know, and we are in a position where we hope we will have more money to spend in these areas, and I would be very strongly in favour of ensuring that we focus on social recovery as well as economic recovery. Just with regards to parental involvement, schools are encouraged to use individual education plans, and in that context, discussion with parents, I believe anyway, should be part of it. And the information we have back is that most schools actually do use some form of individual planning for children with special needs. If there is an appeal system, I'm not sure that it wouldn't cost money. I mean, it would involve further diagnosis and assessment, etc., and further professional opinions. So I think there would be a cost to an appeal system as well.